Have you ever found yourself at a party, at a professional networking event, or even just standing in line at a coffee shop, unsure of how to strike up a conversation, or even to keep one going? Maybe you're just like me. Despite what you see right now, my friends, me speaking to you on camera, I'm not always the most comfortable in social situations. Like many of you, I can speak adequately when someone starts a conversation with me, but I'm not the type that can walk into a room full of strangers and strike up small talk. It's not because I don't want to connect. I absolutely do. But just sometimes, words don't come as easily as I'd like. Worse still, I may sometimes stutter, murmur, or even say something totally unintentional. And then, as you all know, there's also the other side of the spectrum, where one tends to dominate conversations, even if it means just to fill in the silences. The thing is, my friends, whether you identify as an introvert, an extrovert, or somewhere in between, we all want to connect with others. From building friendships to growing professional networks, how we talk, and more importantly, how we listen, can open doors or quietly shut them. So in today's video, let's dive deep into the world of communication. It's not just about introverts versus extroverts, but it's also about how language barriers and cultural differences can all shape how we interact with one another. Now, what is communication? Effective communication isn't just about having the gift of the gab. It's about making the other person feel heard. Research from the Harvard Business Review shows that people who master both casual and meaningful conversation tend to build stronger relationships, both professionally and personally. Our communication styles aren't just about personality types. They're also shaped by our experiences, including the languages we speak and the kind of environments that we've grown up in. In an increasingly multicultural world, improving the subtle art of small talk is all the more important. So today, let's explore 9 subtle mistakes that we all make during small talk and how we can fix them. Don't worry, this is not a masterclass about being a flawless conversationalist. It's just about connecting better, one conversation at a time. One of the mistakes that many of us tend to do is dominating the conversation. Now, extroverts often thrive in social settings, but this enthusiasm can also sometimes lead to unintentionally dominating the conversations. It's not that they're being rude, they're just being too excited to share. So excited that they sometimes forget that small talk is a two-way street. If we are so engrossed in our own narrative, sometimes we forget to pass on the baton. Well, this is an absolute no-no as far as small talk is concerned. Small talk isn't just about sharing your stories. It's about listening, engaging, and giving others a chance to express themselves. So when we find ourselves in a situation where we are dominating conversations, here's what we can do. We can pause and reflect. After sharing thoughts initially, we can take a moment to ask, what about you? Have you ever experienced something similar? We can also practice something called active listening by truly focusing on what the other person is saying instead of mentally preparing ourselves for the next sentence. So tell me, my friends, are you more of a talker or a listener? Let me know in the comments. The next mistake is on the opposite end of the spectrum. It's about hesitating to contribute. Introverts, like me, may sometimes lean towards listening and waiting for that perfect moment to arrive to speak. And sometimes that perfect moment never comes. Of late, I've been trying a number of different things. I've been trying to prepare what is called thought starters. I know this sounds a bit unnatural, but try it. Before attending social events, have a few go-to topics in mind, such as hobbies, travel, work, or even recent events. These can help you ease into conversations. And set yourself small goals. Aim to speak at least once during a group conversation or ask a question when someone shares a story. It's all about taking small steps. The next mistake, which isn't even a mistake, is more of a challenge that many of us, especially expats and immigrants, face. Navigating language barriers. Now, research shows that communicating in a non-native language can create anxiety and make us go either silent or overcompensate by talking too much to mask the discomfort. I remember when I first traveled to the UK on work decades ago, that I was constantly rehearsing and second-guessing myself, my words, my sentences, and I was also worried about my accent. I still am at some times. And if I was ever asked to repeat something, that would stress me out no end. It would fill me with dread and make me a lot more conscious. But we've all made a choice, my friends. There is no running away from our environments. Instead, we need to try and do the best to deal with the situation. What we can do is to use clear, concise language, but not downplay our thoughts just because we fear getting it wrong. And we can also ask for clarification. If you don't understand something, please ask. Most people appreciate honesty over awkward nods. And finally, be patient with yourself. Fluency in a language doesn't always equal fluency in your connections. Your intent matters a lot more than perfect grammar. Does this resonate with you, my friends? Have you ever felt like a language held you back in a conversation? Do let me know. The next mistake that a lot of us make is asking closed-ended questions. So have you ever found yourself in a situation, in a conversation that just fizzles and dies? I know I have. Asking questions that only need a yes or a no can actually stop a chat in its tracks. For example, let's say you're at a professional networking event. You get along very well with a client or an associate, and you get talking, and you suddenly go and ask them, "Do you enjoy your work?" And they go, "Yes." Then what? Absolute silence. It's awkward to say the least. Remember, the secret of a successful conversation lies in asking good questions. Closed-ended questions are conversation killers. They just don't leave much room for the other person to say anything beyond a yes or a no, especially if the other person is an introvert too. So the next time, my friends, try going open-ended. Instead of asking, "Do you like your job?" ask them, "What's the most exciting part of your job?" And also try following up your question. If somebody mentions a hobby, ask them, "How did you actually get into it?" It could well be the difference between an awkward silence and a lively conversation. The next mistake is ignoring non-verbal cues. Now, my friends, we all know that all communication is not verbal. Albert Mehrabian, a pioneer in body language research, has found that 55% of the communication is in fact non-verbal. Imagine you're talking to somebody who's sitting with their arms crossed, leaning back, and you're there leaning forward and gesturing wildly. You can notice a disconnect there, can't you? Research shows that subtly mirroring others' body language can make them feel more comfortable and more connected to you. Now, this doesn't mean that you should mimic their every move, but making small adjustments to match their posture or gestures can create a sense of rapport. And this can result in a more engaging conversation and leave a lasting impression. Another big mistake, an absolute no-no, is abruptly changing topics. And I'm not even talking about an 8-year-old jumping from one idea to another. We as adults can do that too sometimes, mostly due to our eagerness to share a thought or an experience. Abruptly changing topics can come across as dismissive, as if you're not interested in what the other person is saying. It takes away from the flow of the conversation and can make the other person lose interest in talking to you. But actually, it's quite easy to set it right. By consciously learning to practice patience, the conversation can flow naturally, and then we can share our thoughts at the right moments. Now, apparently, there is even a technique for this, and it's called acknowledge, then pivot. So what you can do is say something along the lines of, "Wow, that's really interesting. Speaking of which, this reminds me of blah, blah, blah," and keep the flow going intact. The next mistake that some of us are guilty of is oversharing too soon. There's a fine line between being open and unloading personal details too quickly. Now, we've all been there. While we may be oversharing in an attempt to bond, sharing too much too soon can sometimes overwhelm others and create discomfort. Instead, what we can do is we can practice layering it, revealing bits about our personalities gradually, thereby letting trust build naturally. Mistake number 8, my friends, and one of the pet hates of mine, is focusing on negativity. Constant negativity can be draining, and it can deter others from engaging. It certainly does for me. Complaining may provide temporary psychological relief, but too much of it can turn people off. But like with everything else, there is a fix for this as well. We can fix it by shifting the perspective. If discussing something negative, let's follow it up with a positive twist. For example, it was a tough project, but I learned a lot. Striving to share uplifting stories or positive perspectives can create an enjoyable interaction. For example, in my previous video here, where I was talking about layoffs and redundancies, the positives might just be that it can pave a way for you to connect with like-minded individuals, build relationships that pave way towards something more exciting that you had never explored because of being too settled in your one job role. And the last mistake for today, my friends, and the one that I am most guilty of, is forgetting or hesitating to follow up. Now, you've had an enjoyable conversation, you avoided all the mistakes that we've discussed so far, and you've also enjoyed exchanging contact details. But what happens then? You've never followed it up. Now, this is a crucial step, and this is something that can easily hinder relationship building. But like everything else, we can fix it by following up thoughtfully. Sending a quick message referencing something that they shared shows genuine interest and attentiveness. Now, this small act of remembering and following up can go a long way in fostering deeper connections. So, my friends, let's remember that at the end of the day, great conversations aren't just about being the wittiest or the most talkative person in the room. They are about making others feel seen and heard. The greatest gift we can give another is the purity of our attention. So whether you're an introvert navigating small talk, an extrovert learning to pause, or someone who's overcoming a language barrier, remember, the goal isn't to be perfect. The goal is to connect. So my friends, which of these mistakes have you experienced? Let's chat in the comments and make our conversations more fun and meaningful. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need a good boost in their communication game. Until next time, this is Vivian Robert signing off for the Global Desis.